693 is our number. Now, next, the parents of 4 British teenagers who believe their children died after taking part in viral trends that circulated on TikTok are suing the company. The lawsuit claims the boys died while attempting the so-called blackout challenge. The US-based Social Media Victims Law Centre filed a wrongful death lawsuit against TikTok and its parent company ByteDance on behalf of the children's parents yesterday. One of the parents involved is Ellen Room from Cheltenham. Ellen believes her 14-year-old son, Jules, died 2 years ago after attempting the challenge. She believes his social media accounts could provide the evidence needed. I've been speaking to Ellen, and I began by asking her to tell me about her son, Jules.
My son was 14, amazing, bright, beautiful, plenty of friends, wasn't being bullied offline, had no mental health issues that anybody was aware of, and a delight.
And this, of course, is a case where it wasn't about his friends around him in real life, was it? It was about the dangers online.
Well, that's correct. There was nothing offline that anybody was aware of, whether that be teachers, friends, family, anybody. Nobody was aware of any issues offline. And the only thing I feel we haven't looked at is his social media.
How much social media did he consume? And were you worried about it at any stage? Most parents are. Were you?
Yes, I was. I think it started in lockdown, really. I think being an only child, I would go into his bedroom, he'd be gaming, he'd have somebody on, I don't know if they used FaceTime, but whatever video device they were using, talking to each other, but laughing. And I just kind of ruled it as that was his way of interacting. He didn't have any brothers or sisters. And so I probably, during lockdown, let him use it too much, but I just thought it was harmless. And I certainly thought things like TikTok and Instagram were silly dance videos, and I wasn't particularly worried about it, only that I kept saying, why don't you go outside? Get on your bike. And he was often on his bike. He was always up the hill. So it wasn't like he was constantly alone in his bedroom on his social media. But yes, he did use it quite a lot, particularly in lockdown.
Was he a typical teenager? Maybe didn't tell you everything. Mom, let me get on with what I want to do, or what?
Well, of course he was. Yeah, he was my son. He was always he was always trying different challenges, which I did with him, but what I thought were harmless challenges. So, such as there's a video of us standing up upside down, putting a t-shirt on over our heads. We ate a teaspoon of cinnamon, which I didn't know at the time, but apparently you can inhale it, and I didn't realise it was dangerous. We were just laughing at these silly sort of challenges. The bottle flip thing he did. I didn't know about some more dangerous things like the blackout challenge, and which I now know about.
What is the blackout challenge?
I don't know how much I can say on your program, but it's where you challenge other people to pass out. And the idea is you obviously come round and ideally video it, I think, that you can then show people you made yourself pass out and you come back round. I wasn't aware about that. I only found about it after Jules died. There was another little boy, Archie Battersby, that did, well, we think he did the same thing 6 days before. And at the time when Jules died, everybody kept saying, have you heard about Archie Battersby? And I said, I can't even bring myself to look at it. It was too raw and too emotional to even think about Googling it. I just couldn't bring myself, well, for a long time, probably over a year and a half before I even Googled it. I was kind of aware of what it was, but I couldn't bring myself, I didn't want to see anybody do that. And I now know that there's things like that on social media which are harmful to children.
And had your son ever discussed those type of challenges with you?
Never. And if he had done, I would have said, don't ever be silly. He was the sort of kid that would have tried jumping across the pond in our garden because he thought he probably could, and there's no way he could. But if somebody said, go on, give it a go, he would have probably given it a go and been in the pond. And if I had ever known about it, I would have sat him down and said, never, ever try that. You can't change your mind or it's too risky. And I certainly would have spoken to him about it.
How did you learn, Ellen, about your son's death? Were you in the house at the time?
No, I wasn't. I was out for the day. I was actually horse racing in Cheltenham, and I was ringing him throughout the day, which was normal. Always would have done. And I rang a few times, and one time I said, "Have you eaten?" He said he had a friend here, and he said, "Yeah, there was a pizza in the fridge, so we had that." And Mum, I couldn't start the fire pit, so I used your nail varnish remover. And I remember saying, "Oh God, Jules, just be careful. Please don't burn yourself." I said, "Well, there's marshmallows in the cupboard. Why don't you toast those?" And he did with his friend. There's a video at 8:46 of seeing him walk into our house on our security camera, and he's laughing with a friend. And he says, "See you later, Mont. Bye." And he's laughing. He messaged a friend of his to ask if he wants to play Call of Duty. The friend wasn't available. I rang 3 times at 9:56. Well, I'd actually rung about half an hour before and said I'd be home in half an hour. And he said, "Okay, Mum, love you." And I rang at 9:56 to say I was leaving. And he didn't answer his phone. And I just thought, well, that happens sometimes, normally twice. And then he'd ring me back and go, "What, Mum?" Like I've interrupted his game or something. And he didn't ring back. And I walked into the house at 10:13 and I went straight up to his bedroom and found him not breathing in his room.
My goodness.
The most horrific thing anybody could see, let alone seeing your own child.
I'm sorry. Um,
Thank you.
and the reason that you are speaking out about this is because you feel that the social media companies, the TikToks of this world, should be held responsible, should have a responsibility around all of this.
If we backtrack to realise the reasons why, in the police investigation, they couldn't find anything offline as to why he might have taken his life. And the only thing they didn't try, the forensics machine was down at the time Jules died, so they couldn't get into his phone. Forensically, I understand they hook it up to a device and they don't need a PIN. 5 months after Jules died, his best friend guessed his PIN and the police got into it. And the detective said, "It's not really my area of expertise or something. I'm having to look at it manually." And said there was nothing she could find. Well, the police didn't uncover that he had multiple TikTok accounts, multiple Instagram and Snapchat accounts. And there's a half a page document about his social media that says nothing to be found on the inquest report. The coroner didn't rule that he could be certain Jules was in a suicidal mood, and so it's just a narrative of death by ligature suspension on his death certificate. And I wasn't strong enough at the time to fight it. It wasn't until later I went to the social media companies and said, "This is the only thing we haven't looked at. Can I have his data?" And was refused. I
What was the
didn't,
basis of the refusal? What did they say?
as a parent, you have no right to see your child's social media. And then there were rules around potential privacy about other children. I said, "Well, you can redact the data. I want to see whether there is somebody strange talking to him, whether there's somebody challenging him to do something." And they basically refused without a court order. And then while I was doing journalist interviews, because I raised a petition for my Joolslaw campaign to give parents the right to see social media, social media said to one of the journalists that they might have deleted the data. I had a Zoom call with TikTok and I said, "Well, what do you mean you might have deleted it? A company your size will know whether or not you've deleted it." Well, they can't be certain whether or not things have been deleted and they wouldn't release anything else without a court order, which my only option then was to apply to the Attorney General and the High Court to have his inquest redone at a cost of £86,000 to me. In the meantime, my Jaws Law campaign gained 126,000 signatures in about 2 weeks. And it was heard in Parliament on the 13th of January. Every single MP in January agreed that parents should have that right. There is the data bill coming out, which will give coroners the right to see that information, but I want that amended. Just like when a child dies, they automatically go for a toxology report. I want it automatic that the children's data is preserved from social media companies and requested. And therefore, if you don't need it, just like a toxology report, they did a toxology in Jules, there was no alcohol or drugs in his body, so they didn't need it, but it was done. And that's what I want to happen with the data bill, to change that. But for me, because we've had Jules's inquest, the only way I can get that data is to get a court order to obtain it.
And can I be clear? Do you feel parents should have the right to access their children's social media while they are alive?
No, I initially said that in my campaign. I said whether they're alive or deceased. And then it hadn't crossed my mind that the parents might be the perpetrators. And so I now understand that the parents could be somehow, the perpetrators strange to their children, and so it could be a risk to the children. So live cases, I understand that's more of a risk, and I think we have to rely on the Online Safety Act to protect those children. For children when they're deceased, I think it should be an automatic right, but if they're not prepared to do that, it should be an automatic right that it goes to the coroner, because then as a person of interest, after you've proved you're not a perpetrator, that the parent could see that. But what I want to make sure is that no parent is ever in my situation again, that you can't understand or I don't have a reason why my child took his own life.
Are you worried about what you might read?
Very much so. Yeah. Yeah, I am. But to live the rest of my life and not know why my child has died is even worse. One of the parents in the lawsuit against TikTok has seen videos on her son's phone of her son trying the blackout challenge. And that must be horrific. I can't imagine. It was bad enough finding Jules, but I to watch a video and know that either he was trying it or that he was watching it and seeing other people do it, yeah, that's going to be really hard. But I want to know what happened because it just doesn't make sense. And I came across Laura in the States, the lawyer, and she's got other cases going through where she's got experience with this. And she's aware of social media with harmful, or they know, platforms have got harmful material. And I have to try for those answers. I have to try and understand what happened. Just like as a child died, I guarantee you, if any child had died and you walked in on what I walked in and they had a diary, you'd read that diary and want to know what was going on. It's no different than that. It's just wanting answers as to why my son's not alive.
And have you decided, knowing your son, is it likely that this was the challenge in your view?
There's some circumstances around his death of how he died, how he did it, that don't make sense. And even I raised it with the detective and said, "Do you think that could be possible?" And she said, "Yes, but we can't prove it." My gut feeling has always been it doesn't make sense. And Jules tried all the other challenges, well, not all of them, but he tried at school, apparently sawing a chair in half with a piece of string, which was one of them. I mentioned the other ones earlier. He was let's give it a go. He was always the one to the top of the tree if you're climbing a tree. He was a risk taker, and probably, I hate to say to my detriment, I always encouraged him to push himself. God forbid, not in this area. And if I had known about it, I absolutely would have said, never ever tried that. But he would always give things a try, which I'd encourage about most things. Like if you try your hardest at something, Jules, you can achieve it. Schoolwork, that sort of thing. But I certainly didn't mean with a challenge. And I think parents like me are naive as to what their children are seeing. And I think it's educating. It's educating parents on what children are seeing on social media, and also social media platforms stopping children see it. That needs to change.
Have you had much empathy from TikTok?
No, none. They don't seem to care. I had a Zoom with them and there was like, no, we can't release it to you without a court order. They don't seem to give a damn that you've got parents crying out saying, please give us our data. We were in a parliamentary debate, and it was the first time I was in a room with Meta, Snapchat, and TikTok. And even the MP said, just give her the data. And they said, well, we might be sued for breach of data. And they went, pay the fine, just give them the data. And they don't seem to care at all.
How effective do you think your campaigning has been so far?
Very. I'm amazed. I have thousands and thousands of people. I posted on LinkedIn last night. I think it's been seen by 160,000 people today. I have a massive following of people wanting social media to change and willingness to get that information. There are thousands of people behind me, and I'm very fortunate. There don't seem to be many people that want to complain that should have the right to see that data. I'm not looking to snoop on whether he was messaging his girlfriend or I don't care about any of that. I just want to know why my normal 14-year-old to everybody else took his life one day. And I think as a parent, I should have the right to know that information.
Are politicians helping more than
Massively. Yeah.
tokenistic help?
Yes, very much so. So the parliamentary debate was fantastic. Everybody stood up and said, Ellen should have the right to see this. Other parents should have the right. The minister came up to me and said, let's get a meeting in. And I had an email yesterday from Baroness Jones saying, we're just waiting on some other people and then we'll line up a meeting to get you in to hopefully, ideally, change the data bill so that this is written into law and that other parents in my situation are not forced with this nightmare of having to live. I mean, it's 2 3/4 years and I don't know why my son's dead. And that's incredibly hard.
Ellen, continued success and in your campaigning, and thank you very, very much for sharing your story with me tonight. And I'm sorry. I don't know what to say other than I'm sorry for you.
There,
For
there are
losing
no
your son.
words. Child loss is horrific and there are no words, but I really appreciate your time talking to me and thank you very much for your support.
Thank you, Ellen.
Okay, take care.
Well, TikTok says it prohibits dangerous content or challenges on the platform and directs those who search for hashtags or videos to its safety centre. It said in 2021 it would strengthen its detection and enforcement of rules around dangerous online challenges. Searches for videos or hashtags related to the challenge are now blocked, according to the firm. This block has been in place since 2020.